Now let's get ready to whip up some flies.
All right, folks. So the first fly that we're going to tie here is the olive woolly bugger. Okay. Um, First thing you're going to want to do is we're going to put the bead on the hook. The easiest way to do that I have found is to go ahead and put the hook in the vise like so and try to adjust it as needed so that you can clamp it down. There we go. It's still a little too much. Okay, so it's not going to move. Okay, and then what you want to do, there's two sides to a bead. There's this side that has the little hole and then the big one. What you want to do is you want to put the little hole on top of the point like so and just drop it and it should go right on the hook. Okay, now you want to grab the hook, take it out of the vise, and put it in like you normally would, like so that we can get ready to tie the fly. So, and we're going to fix this in just a minute, and I'm going to show you how. The next step, and I'll give you a minute to get that situated, but the next step is the lead-free wire. What we're going to do is we're going to go like this, and we're going to wrap it at least 5 or 6 times, at least. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's go one more. 9.5, 10. So now what we want to do is we want to pull, put tension on it, and go back and forth at the same time, and it'll break. Okay? Same thing with this side. You want to put a little tension on it and just wiggle it back and forth on that weak spot, and it breaks. Now, essentially what this is going to do is this wraps around, and this is where your thumbnails come in very, very handy. Make sure everything's nice and tight. But that's how it should look. Okay, we're going to want to take our scissors or fingertip or whatever, and we're going to want to slide this right up all the way in there. Okay, that's why you want at least 10 wraps or so, so that you can kind of get to the end or put your thread over some of that, because it's going to hold that bead right up front. And I'll show you. Now you take your thread after you do that and you start wrapping it on. Now I'm kind of hitting that weight a little bit, and I'm just putting a tiny bit of pressure here to kind of lock it in place so that that bead does not move. Now I'll just trim the excess off. And now what we want to do is we want to work our way laying down a little bit of a base. Watch out for the point of the hook. You may have to angle your thread. And you want it so that your thread is hanging pretty much right on the barb, so that you can see that thread is hanging right straight down, pretty much right on the barb. Doesn't have to be dead on perfect, but very close. So now what we want to do is we're going to take our marabou feather. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do this, but I'm going to show you the easiest way for beginners. You take pretty much from the halfway point forward, you want to gently just pull these fibers back, so that you leave yourself this. And you want to take this and you can either wet it down with some water, or if you don't mind and you want to use your saliva, you can do that too. Just wet your fingers. I typically don't, but it's easier to manage if you do. But you want this so that you can pinch it like so and have this to work with. Normally, you want the tail to be as long as this point to the shank, normally. But on a woolly bugger, what you want is you want the tail to be at least as long as the shank or the body. I like it a little bit longer because it adds more action when you're fishing it through the water. So I usually go about 1 to 1.5 times longer. That's my recommendation. You can make it shorter. This is up to you, but this is a good length right here. So right where my fingers are is where I want to tie it in. So I position it, I transfer, I pinch with my other hand, and I'm holding on to it so that it does not move. Now I'm going to bring the thread straight up, and I'm going to go back between my fingers. I'm going to pinch with my left hand, or in this case, as you're looking at it, it's probably right. I'm pinching the thread so that when I come straight down, watch out for the point, but I'm going to come straight down and I'm going to pull so that it's tight without breaking the thread. Just pull strong enough so that you can feel some tension. You can see there's a little bit of tension there. And then just make a couple, 2 or 3 more secure wraps. Make sure not to hit the point of the hook. Okay. Now we're going to tie this in so that we have a uniform body, but before we do, we're going to bring the thread up like so. And we're going to stay a little bit behind the bead, but we're going to come over one time, keeping tension. And we're going to do that a couple more times. And then I'm going to make a couple of wraps. I call them insurance wraps in front, so it's not going anywhere. And I'll trim this off. And you can save this or discard it, whatever you want. We don't really need it, but I'll set it aside for now. So now what we want to do is cover this up and just tie this down. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't expect to get all of the fibers tied down, but you can see how it makes a uniform body. It's all one size. That's what we want specifically, because ultimately what we're going to do is it's going to, by default, it's going to automatically create a type of cigar shape where it's going to be thin back here and it'll be bigger up here. And that's what we're going to want. A little bit of a cigar shape to it. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the grizzly hackle that you have, and we're going to go to the tip section. I'm going to try to do it here so that you can see, so I apologize. But you want to grab the tip like so, and we just want to take our fingers and just, without peeling it off, we just want to squeeze the fibers enough to pull them backwards and splay them out like this, so that we can stop right there. We can trim off the tip, and now we have a tie-in point. Okay, we're going to tie the tip of the feather in first. So again, what we want to do is bring it over here and do one loose loop as best as you can, and then so it stays on top, and just do a couple more wraps. And now what we want to do is very gently pull this feather very slowly into place right there, so that you have this to work with. There's no actual feathers. That's going to be the first wrap over the body. And we're going to do the same thing with the other feather in just a moment. So now we just want to make a couple of additional wraps to secure this in place. Don't go crazy. Just a couple will do. We're going to do the same thing with the olive. Okay, now I want to point out there's two sides to the feather. And I should have mentioned this earlier, and I apologize. You have a concave side where it's rounded on top, and then you have the convex side where it's rounded on the bottom. The convex side is shiny, where the concave side is normally dull or matte finished. You want the concave side facing away from you so that it's kind of cupping over the hook, okay? You want the convex side, the top of the feather, to be facing you, because what's ultimately going to happen is these fibers are going to lay backwards. And I'll show you that as soon as I get the body tied in. So again, same thing. Hold the tip, gently pull them back. Don't strip them off. If you pull too hard, you'll strip them off the stem. And if you get a couple, that's fine, but try not to. Same thing. Cut the tip and lay it on top. Just a couple of wraps. Loose. Again, take the feather, gently pull it into place, like so. Now lock it down with a few more wraps, going back to the same tie-in point as where the tail is, directly above the barb, like that. That is where we're going to start the body in just a moment. Okay? All right. Before we do that, I did forget one little step here, but I like to put in some flash. I'll actually try to remind you before we get to this point. It normally goes in directly after we put the tail in. But this is where I can show you how we can fix things and basically make them look like they were never an issue to begin with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the three fibers and I'm going to lay them down so that they extend past the tail, because I'll trim them to the length that I want. Now in this case, where I have these feathers kind of in my way, I'm just kind of holding everything back, and I'm going to lay this down on top and kind of favoring this side, honestly, because I want them to be on the side. I don't want them to be on top, and I'm going to show you why. And then after I tie that in, bring these other three around on the back side and tie those in. Whoops. That bead didn't stay up like it should have. Interesting. Okay. So we're going to tie these in on the side, and we'll check and see how they're positioned. Like so. That's pretty good. We can mess with them a little later if need be. And then I take them and I trim them so that they're a little bit longer than the tail. Make sure your scissors are sharp. All right, good. Again, we can position those a little bit better after the fact. The other side looks pretty good. Huh, they look a little stretched. All right, there we go. Okay. So now we're going to grab the body material and the chenille, and we're going to take the very tip like this, and we're going to strip some of the fibers off of the end so that we have this little rope sticking out. Okay? And that's what we're going to tie in. Just like that. And then tie in just like this. And then bring your thread all the way forward to right behind the bead. Okay? And I'm going to do this by hand because that's how everybody's going to have to do this. I'm not going to use the rotation function of my vise. So I'm just getting this feather out of my way. So you want to wrap away from you. Go make one wrap over itself, and then directly in front you want to wrap forward. Directly one in front of the other. Don't worry if you overlap some of the flashy fibers, that's fine. Just keep wrapping, pretty much following that stem, one in front of the other, all the way up to just behind. Keep going, and then right here is where you want to be. You don't want to be like right up this far, but just right behind the bead. And then take your thread, come over the top, keeping tension on this. I like to do it 3 or 4 times, and then again, a couple of insurance wraps in the front. And then the nice thing about this cone, there's a lot of area in here. So if you just bring this down and just trim kind of as close as you can, you're good. And then again, I just make a couple of wraps just to be on the safe side. Now, you should all have some hackle pliers. So we're gonna go with the Grizzly first because that was the first one we tied in. And you just wanna pinch the back of the Grizzly like so. Make sure you got a good part of the stem. And you wanna keep it tight, but you don't want it so tight that you're going to pull the feather or break the feather. You just want it so that there's a little bit of tension, so that it's not doing this. You're going to be like this. And then you just take it and you wrap away from you. Watch out for the point of the hook. And we're going to do this in spirals. But if we do this correctly, you can see how this concave side over here is facing backwards. That's what we want, because you want them to fold backwards as much as possible. So we're going to make just a couple more wraps. We're spiraling right up to the front, just like this. Now, I'm not going to do a lot of wraps in the front here because the stem's starting to get a little on the thick side. So we're just going to tie it off, and you can pinch this and release the stem once you have it secure by the thread. And then what I like to do is I like to fold this back like this. And I like to typically tie over the stem a little bit if I can, like that. And so now you can do one of two things. You can cut it, or if you've got it tied in securely like I have, you can just take it and pull forward, and it should snap right off. If not, then trim it. The stem might be too thick, like in this case. So we're going to just trim it. All right. So now we have the olive feather. And again, if you feel more comfortable, grab your hackle pliers. Myself, I like to use my hands. They're the best hackle pliers in the world, and they're permanently attached to me. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to do the same thing. With the concave side facing backwards, I'm going to wrap this directly in front or on top of the grizzly, right where I just laid the grizzly. And what we want to try to do is kind of, as we're wrapping, kind of fluff these feathers out a little bit, because what we don't want is we don't want to pinch down and hold the grizzly down. We want the grizzly and the olive to basically mesh together. So another way I like to do this is just kind of wiggle it so that it's right on top of the other stem. And I'm not pinching and holding down any fibers specifically. All right. Now, I know the stem's getting a little thick, but now we want to try to have it so that we're right up front here. And now wrap one right in the front, and then I like to take my fingers back and preen the fibers and the feather back, and then wrap again, pinch, preen, and I'm holding this feather down with my left hand and then grabbing it with my right hand. And we're going to do this a few more times to go ahead and build up the front of this fly as much as we can before we get to the fuzz, this stuff. And I think I got one more wrap I can make before I get that. Yep. Okay, so now we got to tie it off. Okay. So now I'm going to take my thread and do the same thing, tie it off, couple of wraps, and it's okay if some of those webby fibers get in the front. That's fine. I just don't like a ton of them. I think it looks better this way. So again, what I'm going to do is take this, pinch and hold back, and do a couple, like maybe 5 or 6, 3, 4, 5, 6 wraps, and then take this and again trim the stem as close to the bead as possible, like that, and it should look something similar to this. May not be exact, and that's fine. Okay? And what we want to do here is just simply take your whip finish, if you have a whip finish, and we can show you how to do this, or we can just do some half hitches. I'm going to do a whip finish, and then I'll do a couple of half hitches after and show you how to do those. So this is the whip finish. I'm going to just take this and just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's it. Done. Now, I'm going to do a couple of half hitches here. So you just take your fingers like this, lay it on top of the thread, literally come up, twist, make a cross, come up, under, let go, and then slowly bring the loop down, just like that. So what you can do there is do that, and do that, and we got there's 2 half hitches and 3 half hitches, okay? And that's more than enough to do what we need to do here, because I'm going to show you why. You don't have to head cement this fly. I like to, just for the additional durability, but you don't have to. So then just bring your scissors up to the thread, and you can do one of 2 things. You can snip it, or just take the blade and it'll cut the thread. And that is the bead head woolly bugger. And is a great fly for trout, bass, panfish, pretty much any predator fish will go after that. And you can tie them in multiple colors. I'm going to take a little bit of head cement, and what I like to do myself is I hold everything back so that I can get right behind the bead where the thread is, and you can probably just barely see the thread yourself. And then I get some head cement and just squirt it right in there so that I fill some of that up like that. And then I just let it dry. And it doesn't take very long with the lacquer that I use. That'll be dry, but that'll just add a little bit more durability, and you're good to go. Now let's see what your flies look like.